Welcome everybody to The View from the Top. Apologies that we're a few minutes late starting today, but we had a technical problem and for some reason that I don't understand, we were not managing to live stream to LinkedIn. Anyway, looking at my screen, it looks like everything's working fine now. So thank you everybody for bearing with us. Please, if you're listening on LinkedIn, if you're viewing us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, please can you let us know, please can you come back to us and say hi and let us know that you're out there. This only works really if you're there too. And I'm delighted to see that that it is working with LinkedIn now. That's you cannot imagine what a relief that is. And we're getting comments through, so that's great to see that you're all there. We've got an amazing session for you today. As ever, we've got Julie Onslow-Cole, who's going to give us her global update of everything that's going on around the world in immigration and travel. But we've also got, and I'm delighted to say, we've got Lynn Shotwell. Lynn Shotwell, of course, is the newly appointed president and CEO of ERC, and she's been in post for literally just a month. And we're going to have a really good in-depth conversation with Lynn to find out what's going on. So I'm seeing people are coming in. I'm seeing Giovanni De Carlo's come in. He's with us from Zurich. Shani Morris from London. Andrea Strakvist from Winchester. Priyamvada from Bangalore. We've got people from Dallas, from Denver, from Chicago. So that's great. You know, we really do want to know who's out there. That's what makes this such a special event. So, you know, as I think many of our regulars know, we want you to write in the comments box. Tell us that you're here. Tell us what's going on in your lives. Tell us what the issues are. The more comments we get, the better. And ask questions as well. You know, we've got a wonderful, 25 minutes or so with Julie Onslow-Cole, the world's leading expert, one of the world's leading experts on immigration. It's your chance to ask a question of what's going on in this fast-moving environment. And also we've got, the wonderful Lynn Shotwell. And I'm sure many of you are going to be wondering about what's going on with ERC, what are her plans, how ERC might, respond to the crisis that we're all facing, how ERC can help us, how we can help ERC. We're going to get into all those issues, as well as just doing a Meet Lynn session and finding out a little bit about, Lynn's background and how she got into this industry. So, as I say, we're talking about, the view from the top, and this is your chance to interact with some of the leading professionals in our industry. We're here every week. Julia, it's great to have you here. So many thanks, Julia, for being with us. And Julia is going to be talking about, the global mobility challenges that we're seeing, especially the immigration challenges that we're facing. Before we get on to Julia's roundup, I do want to cover off on a couple of other points. The first is, as I think many of you know, we at Benivo have launched a pro bono COVID-19 support tool. This has had amazing traction globally, and we're so pleased that so many people have got involved. A large number of major companies have agreed to support this tool, and I'll just give a shout out to them. So Fragaman, Impact Group, REA Partners in Transaction, King & Mayer, Global Excel, World Pet Travel, Airing, Living Abroad, Net Expat, Bennett International Schools, and there's more in the pipeline. And if I've forgotten anybody, I really apologize. And a lot of corporates have come on board and they want to use this tool. We have just launched an amazing new feature to it, which I'm really very proud. It's called Where Are My Employees? And if you use that feature, then it will automatically tell you where your employees are at the time. So it can tell you down to the country or city level where the employees are. And you get it on a map and you can call it out and you say, well, actually, I want to know which of my employees are in such and such a location. Well, all of that is there and live. So, it's pretty exciting stuff. If you don't know about the pro bono tool, then ask any of our partners. You see the names at the bottom. I'm sure they'll tell you about it. Or simply, probably maybe even easier, go onto the Benivo website and you can see a demo of it and you can find out more about it online. And we're a pretty generous bunch out at Benivo. Not only are we offering that as a free tool, we've actually today launched another free tool, which we think some of you may like. And this is us being very optimistic for the future. And this is and it comes out of discussions, I think, that Julia and I had earlier on earlier sessions about remobilization, and some of our corporates came in. So what we've put together is a remobilization checklist. This is promising no answers. Okay, so let me be completely honest about this. We're not promising any answers. What we are promising are some questions. And what we're doing is, with the remobilization checklist, it's a 12-point checklist, and it covers all the areas that you will need to discuss with your mobility teams. So in terms of the sort of areas it covers things like the business model. What's the business model going to be like in future for your organization? What about your policies and processes? What changes are you going to have to make to your policies and processes in the future? What about immigration and visas? What should you be doing to prepare now to remobilize, to get your immigration requirements sorted, to get your visas and work permits in place? What about taxation? What could be the taxation consequences of having people working from home or working out of country in ways that you didn't think of before? Do you understand what those tax consequences are? It's not giving you the answers, it's giving you the questions. What about cost containment? What are you going to be able to do to help your organization contain costs? What about duty of care? What are the duty of care implications if you're going to move somebody to an environment which might be more COVID dangerous than where they are at present? What about healthcare and insurance? Are you going to change your healthcare policies or insurance policies? Are they being changed for you by your insurance providers? Do you understand what the issues are? What about the employee experience? How can you make the employee experience better, especially given that many employees who might now be moving might be a bit more fearful about moving than they were before? What about travel? How are you going to change your travel policies? Can you have business travelers in a world where, for example, they have to be quarantined 2 weeks on arrival and 2 weeks when they return back home? Is that even be possible to do the old 2 or 3 day business trip we've thought about in the past? What about communication? How are you going to communicate all this to your assignees? What about your implementation strategy? How are you going to go about implementing this new strategy? And then lastly, in our 12-point checklist, what about your own internal mobility operating model? Okay, as I said, we're not going to give you any of the answers, and there's no cost for this. This is a free checklist that you can download. Just go on to the Benivo website, and you can download this checklist. I think it's a really good tool. I'm biased. I helped draft it. But it's something you can take away and then share with your mobility team, and just get your thinking as you start talking. Let me introduce you to our first guest. Lynn, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
Hey, Lynn. We're going to talk to you in a while. Julia's first of all going to do her global update, but it's really great to have you on board. And I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of people with questions to ask you as we go through. So great to have you here, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And we're getting loads more comments coming in, just looking through. I'm seeing people from, all over the place. From New York, from London, from Cleveland, from Paris, and Prague, Switzerland, UK, Philly, foggy San Francisco. We're getting weather reports now as well. Rain in Chicago. It's a bit overcast here in London. I don't know what it's like in DC, Lynn. From New Delhi, from Madrid, from San Diego, I think we've got half of Philly here today. Los Angeles, Sri Lanka, Sao Paulo, just all over. And I've seen names of many old friends on there, and many people we know. So it's going to be a great event. Okay, I'm going to stop with the introduction now. I think let's get down into it. Our first guest is Julia Onslow-Cole, as ever, and Julia's going to be giving us a global immigration update in a week when a lot has happened. I know, obviously, it was this time last week when we were live, and President Trump, I think within a few hours beforehand, had made his announcement about the suspension of immigration, and I'm sure you're going to get into that. But I'm sure there's other areas that you're going to go first. So maybe we can start off, Julia, and you can just talk us through the global trends, and then do your tour around the world. And people out there listening, If anybody wants to ask a question as we go through, please ask your questions in the comments box on LinkedIn, and we will do our best to answer your questions as we go. Julia, give us the world tour.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. So I'm going to give you a global immigration update, and then I'm going to discuss what's happening with low-paid migrants, particularly in the Gulf, because they're often living in very cramped conditions with reduced access to healthcare. And this has been a real emerging issue. And I think it's really important just to say something about it, and also use it as a very useful illustration of the emerging political issues, which will inform immigration policy as the COVID restrictions start to roll back. So I'm going to start off, as I normally do, with China. The China travel ban continues. Only Chinese citizens, those who are permanent residents and residents of Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan can enter. And I spoke on Monday to Becky Xia, our partner in China. And although there's nothing published, she believes there's going to be a partial liftoff of that travel ban in May. And she thinks it will be for those that have work visas. And we know there's an enormous appetite for employers to move work visa holders back into China. Now, we have been seeing a real increase in permanent resident applications. So these are people who nearly had obtained permanent residence. And the reason that companies are making those applications is that then they're not subject to a travel ban. And we've also seen the deployment of other people who are not subject to the travel ban into vacant jobs in China. So, for example, we have some examples this week of people who've moved residents of Hong Kong into China. And as Brian had said at the beginning about remobilization strategies, these are two really good strategies that you can employ worldwide for your workforce. So the first one is looking at those who you could make permanent residents because they're often not subject to travel bans. And also the second one is remobilizing other people who, because of their immigration situation, also can escape the travel ban. And I wrote an opinion piece, which was published yesterday in Personnel Today, about the fact that global mobility leaders will really pave the way in the recovery. Your jobs have never been so important. And all of these remobilization strategies are the exact things that your companies need to get them back on a pathway to growth. Now, we've been talking for the last week and the week before about this very new process, whereas your work visa holders cannot just return to China, but they need a visa at a Chinese consulate. And this is a new requirement. So in the past, work visa holders had a re-entry visa automatically, but now they need to get this visa. And you will know that we've been explaining that it's slightly more difficult for those on a B permit visa because they have to get pre-employment authorization and a proper work visa. But those on A visas, they have a concession where they just have to get a travel visa or a business visit visa, which is much, much easier to obtain, and they can switch it when they're in China. So as a practical point, we have not seen any visas issued yet past the 28th of March, but lots of Chinese consulates are accepting the visas. So you really should be looking into it. And as I explained in the last couple of weeks, there's very consistent practices in the different Chinese consulates, but you should really look into this now and be ready for a potential lifting of the ban to get your work visa holders back into China. The other thing I've been telling you the last few weeks is that it's really important in all the countries, but particularly in China, to look after your assignees and be very strict with them about following the quarantine rules and the health measures. And we've told you about cases where people have been arrested for going on jogs in breach of quarantine and not wearing masks. And we've explained last week about the health app that you should help your assignees load. And we've explained that they will need to follow all these new procedures. But in the last week, since I spoke to you last Wednesday, there's a further procedure, which is that if you're going from a city in China which is a high-risk city, say like the Hubei province, to a lower risk city, for example, Haikou, then you will need to go to a government-appointed facility and get a certificate. Now, this is such a new process that we don't know how long the certificate will last, and we will find out more for you for next week. But I think it just underscores the difficulties in ensuring that your assignees know about all these regulations and are completely following everything. So I think, that is a very big pointer in your remobilization plan.
And can I ask you, Julia, whilst we're still on the subject of Asia Pacific, question coming in from, this is from Nada, who is the Employment Immigration Advisor at Under Armour. And her question is, Julia, to my knowledge, Chinese consulates abroad are mostly closed, so employees are unable to apply for a visa to return to China. Any indication when the consulates will open?
Yeah, really good question. Thank you for that question. The thing is, most of them aren't closed, but they have really limited openings. So, for example, the Netherlands is open 9 to 5 on a Friday only. So it might seem that they're closed, but they are open, but very sporadically and often not at the times that the website says. So you have to really dig deep for that information. If you sent me something on LinkedIn and said which country you're specifically concerned with, I could try and find out some more information. But that is a really good question, but you need to persevere. So just carrying on with Asia Pac and continuing with Singapore, remember that in Singapore, there's a very strict travel ban, and they have just extended what they're calling the circuit breaker until the 1st of June. And unfortunately, there's been an enormous spike in applications, in cases, coronavirus cases. There was nearly 800 on Monday. And these were mainly in the low-paid migrant workers where there's been quite poor living conditions. Now, you'll recall that last week I explained there was a lot of people, work visa holders for China, who were stuck in Singapore. And we discussed last week the fact that you can apply for an extension, although it's meant to be a 90-day maximum stay in Singapore, you can apply for an extension. And someone last week said to me, well, I've got an extension, but it says final extension warning. Can you extend that? And I actually asked Mark Buchanan, our regional lead partner in Asia Pac, and he said, yes, they just actually got some extended where it says final extension warning. So you can, the answer is yes, you can keep extending. Obviously, each case is decided on its merits. The other practical point is that on Monday, the Ministry of Manpower said that all employers must update the residential addresses and the mobile phone numbers of their employees, and that's for tracing. And we've been doing this for a lot of clients because it's quite an administrative task, but there's a really big emphasis on compliance, and the government will take action against companies and individuals for not doing this. And that does bring me on to another point, which is business travelers, which you should be putting on your remobilization shopping list, because I think not only in Singapore, but elsewhere, there will be a lot of issues around compliance on business travelers, because they will be seen as creating a potentially higher risk in the basis that they will be flying in and out and staying in hotels. So, that's really, really important. So I'm going to move on now to the Middle East and just start with the UAE, and want to thank again my partner Haider Hussein for his update, which again he's done for me overnight. So in Dubai, we have this partially lifting of the lockdown, and instead of 24-hour lockdown, people are allowed to move around from 6 to 10. And they've also announced some economic and commercial activities, but staffing levels should not exceed 30%. Now, we expect all government centres to initiate operations from next week, but international flights stay suspended. There's a really good interview, which was yesterday, which you could find on Bloomberg, with the Director General of Dubai's Department of Tourism and Commerce, and it was breaking news yesterday. He said that flights should be reopened on the 1st of July. And it's really worth listening to what he has to say, because he's very optimistic about travel coming back quite quickly to the region, about how they're reaching out to their international partners, how he sees these 3 phases between now and July, obviously nothing, but from July, he's expecting quite a lot of travel, people seeing their families, important business trips, and then gradually getting back to normal. And he said that they've done a lot of research about people's habits while they're in lockdown, and he realizes they might be a bit skewed. But there is an awful lot of people looking at travel websites and holidays, so it might be that we're all very aspirational, but that's a positive sign. Now, I wanted to give you a very important update about these automatic renewals, because last week I explained that what has happened in the UAE is that residence permits holders had been given an automatic renewal till Christmas. And I explained that what Haida Hussein, my partner, had pointed out is that everyone is going to be applying at the same time, because all the renewals will end at Christmas. And he said, it's a good idea to start a little bit earlier. But this is a really, really important update, is that we have since found out that if you want to travel, then you will lose that expiration. So actually, what people are now doing is just making an extension application. And since the government will be back opening fully the immigration next week, it's advisable to do that. Otherwise, you'll have people on extensions who effectively are not able to travel. So I think that's a really, really important update. And also, I just wanted to say a quick update on Saudi Arabia. There is a partial lift down of the lockdown, which is good. And you'll recall that I said that we have lots of people who are actually stuck in Saudi Arabia, and they were really pleased that there's some flights, some outbound flights that they can take. And I said it was only their employers that could apply to book the return flights, but actually now they've got a new portal opened up, so they actually, individuals can make applications, and that's really important. So if you're independent contractor stuck in Saudi, you will be able to apply and leave. Now, Azim Muhaddin, who's our partner in Qatar, also has given me these 2 really important updates for you. The first one is that Qatar stays under a partial lockdown, and people who've entered Qatar on a visa on arrival have had their status extended, and it's extremely generous. There's no fees, it's done automatically. But what he's saying is it's really, really important that you check with the Ministry of Interior's visa service portal to confirm the exact period of the extension. Because Zine said that what we're finding is that the extensions vary from person to person. And once people the travel's back to normal, they're going to be given a grace period to leave the country. So you should go on the Ministry of Interior's visa service portal now. And the second thing he said, which was really, really important, is that business visa holders can extend beyond 90 days. That isn't a problem. And it's great because when they extend, they're free to work, but you must extend them. So you mustn't get into a false lull because, you're thinking it's being done automatically. You have to do it, because otherwise, it would lead to overstaying fines.
Okay, that's really helpful, Julia. We're going to move on to Europe and then North America. And I know a lot of people are waiting to meet Lynn Shotwell as well. Lynn, of course, is backstage with us at the moment, and we're going to be bringing Lynn out shortly. And in fact, I've already seen some comments. I know, Lynn, you can hear us, although we can't hear you whilst you're backstage. We're hearing comments from people saying congratulations on your immediate positive impact on the process of reconnecting WERC with lobbying. That's from Ed Cohen, so big shout out to you, Ed. And more comments of congratulations coming in. So anyway, Julia, let's move on to, is it Europe we're going next on our?
Yes, Europe.
Okay,
yes, so, there are restrictions that are gradually easing across Europe. I would recommend a very good article in today's FT which is showing how the easing of restrictions are linked to the uptick in the economic activity. France, businesses will be open from May the 11th, and Spain hopes to do it in a four-stage plan, which will be completed by the end of June. Ireland is starting easing restrictions on Monday. We still don't have anything from the UK. But the key thing, I think, around Europe is there is so much immigration strategic planning that can be done. And also you have to be really, really careful about compliance.
Can I ask you a question on Europe that from Priyanvada M, not sure what M stands for, Priyanvada, and I'll be honest, I don't understand the question, but I'm hoping that you do, because it's outside my knowledge zone. And Priyanvada's question is this: if intra-EU borders open earlier than international borders, do you see a rise in van der Elst applications so assignees fulfilling the criteria can be rotated within the EU as an alternative to getting new assignees into the EU?
Yes, that man needs an A star on his homework. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yes, I do. That's basically his exactly highlighting what I've just said about European strategy. That's exactly the sort of thing that you should think of. A van der Elst visa is a special type of visa that can be used where there are because there are different behaviors with intra-company movement, intra-nation movement as to the EU border. So it's a complicated question, but he's dead right. And yes, that's a good one.
Great question, great answer. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm moving on to the US now, and I wanted to thank Bo Cooper. He's our head of government strategies in Washington. So everyone knows that when we went live last week, we were all rather shocked because President Trump last Monday, just before 10 o'clock our time, had issued this tweet, and we hadn't seen the proclamation, so we were just saying that this week we were going to talk about it. And what happened, we now know, is that after he issued the tweet, the US government scrabbled around internally deciding how they were going to implement this tweet and what the proclamation should say. Now, the tweet indicated there'd be a broad approach to the suspension of immigration into the US, and that it could have potentially really significant consequences. And we now know that behind the scenes, there was a significant pushback from the private sector and also internally by the White House staff. And when the proclamation was issued, it was really relatively narrow, and it had a very narrow effect on business because it only prohibits a person the next 60 days from going into a US consulate outside the US to obtain, to lodge a permanent resident application. And why is this so narrow? First of all, as a practical effect, green cards based on professional ability are usually done inside the US, so you don't have to go to a consulate. And secondly, of course, as we've been talking in previous weeks, the US consulates are effectively shut. So everyone sighed a big sigh of relief, thought that was okay. We were all really scared on Monday night, but no, this is okay. But quickly, people began to focus on the other requirement in the proclamation, which says that immigration agencies must review the effects of non-immigrant programs, which are the effects they're having on the US economy, and they have to make additional recommendations to the president within 30 days. Now, this is really a broad remit, and it creates a platform for the government to identify and take other steps. Now, there was a leaked recording between the president's chief immigration advisor at the White House, Stephen Miller, and Ken Cuccinelli, who's the acting principal director of the USCIS. And they were on a call to supporters of the president, explaining about the proclamation and discussing how the proclamation should be discussed. And the words were used that this proclamation was to cut off the faucet of immigration workers. And on the call, the discussion was that this was part of a much broader plan, so that this is just the first of many new proclamations. Now, yesterday, there was a poll reported in the Washington Post saying that the idea of temporary suspension of immigration into the US was very popular, even with the young and Democrats who normally support immigration. So the conclusion is that this is not just a 60-day process, it's a message to the public, and it appeals to the public, and obviously it's in the environment of a forthcoming election. And so therefore, Lynn and her lobbying and a company's individual lobbying has never, ever been so more important. And now finally, last 2 minutes, I just wanted to say a couple of words on the impact of COVID-19 on low-paid workers. It's a real issue, and the crisis has actually shown the harsh living conditions that a lot of very low-paid migrants are living in. And also they have very little savings and they don't have a health cover. The World Bank released a report last week. It's really worth looking at into this whole issue. And they estimated there will be a 20% drop in remittance flows. And this will really affect a lot of nations. So for example, if you look at Nepal, 30% of GDP in Nepal actually comes from remittances. And I have a very good friend called Froilin Melit, and he is an academic, and he's about to also issue a report in this area. So countries have stepped up. The UAE have offered generous repatriation schemes, but the difficulty is a lot of people don't want to go. Unfortunately, some of the repatriation schemes have actually attracted quite negative publicity. I know Saudi Arabia sent 3,000 people back to Ethiopia without health checks. And I think that at the same time, you know, there's also quite low-paid migrants, for example, Filipino nurses who are in great supply. So there's this question of, you know, should they have a minimum wage? So I think the whole issue is a really complicated one, but it does throw up a lot of different political issues. The Global Forum for Migration and Development are doing 2 webcasts. There's another one tomorrow with Austin Fragman speaking, and lots of other people from around the world in different countries. I would recommend that to you. I think it's a really, really important issue.
Okay, thanks a lot, Julia. As ever, a real tour de force. Really appreciate it, and some fascinating insights. One question that just came in from Michael Maher. Do we have any anecdotal information as to whether we think the Trump administration might modify the executive order? Seems not likely, but looking proactively to address employee concerns.
I don't think there's much information that they will amend the existing order. I think what I'm trying to highlight is that, you know, I think there will be further orders as a result of the, you know, report that's going to be given to the president about the effect of migration on, you know, on resident labor in the US.
Okay, thanks very much, Julia. What I'd like to do now is to bring Lynn into the conversation. So, Lynn, it's great to have you here on the show. We really appreciate it. I know you've been there for, what is it, a month now?
30 days. If you count weekends, today's 30 days on the job.
And you were telling me earlier, we've got a little bit of a virtual green room that we have here. And you were telling me earlier that you've not actually been into the office yet.
I have not been in the office, and I've not met anyone on my team in person. So it's all been virtual one-on-ones, trying to get to know everybody in this new world. So it's been a very different start than I anticipated, but we're making it work.
Well, welcome to the new world of work, and to everybody out there. I know everybody is really keen to meet Lynn. You are the hot news in probably second only to Server Carter's in the last 24 hours. But you know, you are the great people are really interested to know. You know, you're filling some pretty big shoes after Peggy and Chris Colley in years gone by, and many congratulations from myself, from Julia, and from everybody in the industry. But for people who are out there on LinkedIn, please do ask questions of Lynn. I will ask my questions, but this is your chance to ask questions. We'll make it as interactive as we can. I'm already getting comments coming in. Ed Hannibal, obviously you're chairman at ERC.
Right there. Yeah.
Great show and content, Julia, Brian, and Benivo. Wonderful guest star, Lynn. Thank you, Ed. And many more comments, and thanks also to Julia for his presentation. But let's start off, Lynn. You know, I think I first met you when you were back at ACIP back in the day. But let's go back earlier. Just tell us about yourself when you were sort of a kid. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Just tell us. You know, let's meet Lynn.
So actually, it's a great question, because I think my whole life kind of has led up to this position. So I think the most important thing is I had 11 houses in 5 states by the time I was 14. My dad was in sales, and when the company said pick up and move, we picked up and moved. Since I graduated from high school and went to college, I've lived in I think 3 or 4 more states and a couple of countries. So really,
Michigan, you went to school? Is that right?
I went to undergrad at Michigan State and law school at University of Michigan. So my blood still runs green because I married a Spartan. But anyways, you know, really believe one of the things that's been so instrumental in my life, when I had the opportunity to live and work overseas, it opened my eyes to an incredible new world. And I really believe that people should have the opportunity to kind of move to pursue their dreams. And so I'm excited to be part of Worldwide ERC and leading that, because I think, you know, we're going through a rough phase right now. We might see some, you know, closing of the borders like we are here in the U.S. and, you know, concerns about people moving and immigration. But I think in the long run, we're all better off if we have more open borders where people are free to kind of take their talents where they can best be utilized. And I think that's what's going to get the economy kickstarted again for all of us. Yeah,
because you're an attorney, aren't you?
I am an attorney, yes.
Okay.
So when I went to...
I won't hold it against you or Julie. I'm surrounded by attorneys, yeah.
I think I'm somewhat of a recovering attorney, because I haven't practiced in a law firm in over 20 years. But, you know, when I was in law school, my favorite subjects were immigration and employment law. And prior to law school, I actually had worked in the HR department of Oldsmobile. And so when I got to law school, I realized, one, not only had I taught English illegally in Brazil, I did what I was told to do in terms of getting a visa, but then I got to law school and realized maybe that wasn't exactly what I should have done. But I also learned that maybe some of the HR practices, because I was working in HR at the time that the whole I-9 regulations were put into place, and it was brand new. None of us knew what we were supposed to be doing. And so it was my job to tell people what documents to bring. And I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to say, just bring your driver's license and your social security card. So anyways, I thought this was really interesting. So when I graduated from law school and went to work at Aaron Fox, these were the areas I focused on. But I pretty quickly in my job got pulled into lobbying. We were working on a case where we had flight attendants who'd been fired because they weighed too much. So we were doing both litigation on that and then some advocacy work. And I figured out that I liked advocacy way more than practicing law. So, over a couple of years, I had the opportunity to go to work for ACIP, leading their advocacy efforts, really focused on immigration. And it's just kind of grown from there. When I took over ACIP, I knew we wanted to grow globally and do more. I also started seeing the connections between immigration law and other employment laws. And so that's where we negotiated an affiliation with SHRM, ended up changing our name to the Council for Global Immigration, and then completely merging the organization. So it's been an exciting, the time has gone by, it's been 20 some years, but it's been a really exciting time to be involved in this and just see this whole industry continue to grow and evolve over time.
Yeah, I mean, if ever there was a time that we needed a lobbyist at the top of the ERC, now is the time. I mean, there's so much pain and hurt. We'll get on to that in a bit in the conversation, but I'm still at the moment, I just want to find out a bit more about Lynn and meet Lynn. And
okay.
Let me just ask you this question. Who have been your inspirations in your career? What sort of, got you going? Just tell us a bit about, who inspired you, but probably more importantly, in what way they inspired you, what you learned from those mentors that you must have had either in your personal life or in your school life or in your work life?
Yeah. So if I think about who've really been my mentors and the people I rely on, first and foremost is my dad. He was always very encouraging of me pursuing whatever I thought I wanted to pursue. And he's really been kind of a moral compass and a sounding board over the years. But beyond that, really look at Austin Fragaman, who was the chairman of ACIP and has been a tremendous mentor to me over the years. He has such vision. I just think it's so amazing how he's started working in immigration back when not very many lawyers worked in immigration. And he's built this global practice. He, founded ACIP. He's really led the way. And he's not only does he have vision, but he's just such a calm and inspiring presence. So really appreciate his work over the years. And then I think about a guy named Bob Waters, who's unfortunately passed away, but I worked with him at Errant Fox. And I don't know, for anybody who's been a lawyer, those first couple of years as a new lawyer are not easy. And Bob really helped me learn how to treat employees with respect and dignity and also mentor them. So I try to model a lot of what I do with my team on how he treated me so well.
Cool. That's really, really interesting. And a big shout out to Austin Fragman. Hope you're keeping well. For those of you who enjoy this View from the Top series, before a couple of months ago, we ran this as a podcast rather than a live cast. And if you go on the Benivo website, one of the people that I interviewed fairly early on, I think it was probably season 1 of The View from the Top, was Austin Fragaman. So if you're interested to find out about Austin Fragaman and about his life, and indeed who inspired him, take it back a generation or so, then do go on The View from the Top and listen to that podcast. It's about 40 minutes long. I'd like to think it's a good listen. I certainly enjoyed recording it. So Lynn, anyway, we found out a bit about you, about your route, and I know you went through ACIP, and I think you were at SHRM as well, weren't you? And then you went, just recently, just a month ago, to ERC. So tell me a little bit about ERC. I mean, I'm suspecting that many people listening to this know ERC. We've got a lot of people here just looking at the names of people on LinkedIn. But give us your take. What is ERC to you? What do you want it to be? What is its mission? Is too formal a word. I don't get into vision. But what do you think ERC's role to be?
I think this is a great question, and I'm working really closely with our board, who's been driving a new strategy. They've been thinking about kind of what is ERC's role in this new world of mobility, where there are so many different players. And I think what we bring, we've been around since 1964, initially focused just on kind of mobility within the United States, but then expanded worldwide. And our goal is really helping mobility professionals be successful in their jobs. They need to, how can we provide tools and resources to help them help their assignees be successful? Because if the assignees are successful, then the company's successful. So, this is really what we're focused on, and we're thinking about how can this is a really very quickly evolving industry. It was even before coronavirus, and I think that's just going to accelerate now. So how do we tap into the experts in the industry and leverage them to help us create tools and resources and networking opportunities for mobility professionals so that they can really drive the innovation that they need within their own companies? We currently have, we're a not-for-profit organization, and we have over 7,000 members and 3,500 corporate members. So we have over 7,000 individuals who are members in 3,500 companies, and they're spread out around the world. I have a team of 29 employees who are in the U.S., Europe, and Asia. And, one of the things we're doing right now is really taking a very close look at everything we do and saying, all right, how do we evolve our programming? How do we put on events around the world? And how do we put on events in a virtual world? What are the other tools and resources that we can be providing that will really be essential to people in the mobility community? And so I think everything's on the table right now. We're looking at, are there some things we need to sunset? So as we think through our strategy, it's really going to be a member-focused strategy about what can we do to best serve this whole industry.
Okay, and a question coming in, and please, out in LinkedIn world, do keep your questions coming in. But questions due, Lynn, from Paloma, who is with Simple City Relocation Partners, and she says this: Oh, it's a big question. We could do a whole just on this one question. And this is live, so Lynn's got no time to prepare for this. Here we go, Lynn. What do you think will be the biggest challenges to global mobility in this new world?
Mm-hmm.
And if
I think in this new world, so I think one of the biggest challenges will be for companies is what's your new duty of care? So, as you're moving people, whether it's across the country or around the world, what are you going to do to make sure that you have safety and security in place for them at all times? And how does that then trickle down into your mobility policies and the packages that you're putting together? I think some employees are going to be more hesitant to move than perhaps they were a while ago. I think the nature of assignments will change. Potentially where we see more kind of long-term permanent relocations again, rather than a lot of short-term temporary assignments. I think we just don't know. Brian, I loved the list of questions that you've posted, your remobilization checklist. Those are some of the same things that we're looking at. And in fact, we have a summit coming up, a virtual summit in May 13th and 14th, that will focus on a lot of these. We're calling it Road to Recovery. So the same things, we're going to have panels that start talking through those about, all right, what do you have to start thinking about with, tax issues in this new world? And what are the questions you need to be asking yourself? What are some of the potential answers? And I see ERC, what we can do is provide a forum for peers to get together and compare notes and think through these really tough questions that are coming up as we think about what reentry looks like.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add into that question, nobody knows what the future is going to look like, but what we do know is it's going to be very, very different to where we are at the moment. And echoing Lynn's point, I think in many ways permanent transfers and long-term assignments may actually come a lot more back into vogue, because short-term assignments and business travel is going to be a lot harder. It depends how long, obviously, it lasts, but if countries keep in place 14-day quarantines, then that pretty much kills business travel, cross-border business travel. If you've got 14 days when you arrive and 14 days when you return, there's not much point doing a 3 or 4 day trip if that's going to keep you out of action for another 28 days. So the other thing that I think we're going to see is a lot more take up of technology. I mean, we're seeing that. I mean, so many, I know some of the people on this call, and obviously people I know from my professional life, and indeed Lynn will know from hers, are in the events business. Events, we're seeing that every day. All the events companies are going virtual at the moment. Face-to-face meetings are going to be impacted. So I think we're going to see lots of changes. The cost of business travel is probably going to go up. The cost of personal travel is going to go up. If airlines have to start practicing social distancing, then if the airlines are not to go under themselves, then they're going to put their prices up. So I think we're going to find problems there. I think also we're going to find a lot of pressure from our employers to cut costs. Yeah. What I would urge everybody to do, I mean, Lynn, you kindly referred to it, is we have put out this checklist, and it's available on the Benivo website. We're very happy to share it and team with you at ERC on that, Lynn. But if anybody else would like to download that checklist, it's there, it's free. We're not trying to make any money out of it. If it helps you plan your own strategy, then please use it. We don't claim any great insight on this. It's our best stab. I'm sure there'll be other things we've missed out on in areas that aren't responsible. But Lynn, we're getting lots of comments coming in, and let me just read some of them out to you. From Cohen Guillermo, these are extraordinary times, and we are pleased to have Lynn lead our global community through this recovery. So shout out.
Erwin.
Ed Cohen, challenge is the same, or challenge equals risk mitigation. And that's been agreed with by a few people. From Carmen Vendina, looking forward to the summit. It's going to be very informative. Thank you, Lynn. We have a great leader at ERC. There's a lot of love out there for you.
So kind. Thank you. I love this community. Everybody's so welcoming.
It is. It's such a friendly world. Here's a question for you, Lynn, from Caroline Pack-Nathan. Can Lynn speak to the ERC advocacy that Ed referenced last week vis-a-vis the stimulus program? And that, yeah. That's Ed Hannibal, not Ed Cohen I just talked about. Yeah. Ed chairman of ERC, was on the show last week, and he talked about some of the lobbying that you've been doing. Mm-hmm. So say a little bit about that and where you see that going.
Absolutely. So this is one of the areas that I came into this wanting to step up our advocacy efforts, and this crisis has really accelerated what we're doing. So we're really putting more resources into this. The most immediate thing that we can do for the industry is partner with other business organizations to get financial relief from Congress. So we supported the Paycheck Protection Act, the CARES Act, to get just general business loans and payroll relief to the extent that we can. We're also partnering with the International Association of Movers and AMSA on trying to get some provisions that are specific relief to the relocation industry. There's potentially a hook there if we hook into some of the Department of Defense funding that would compensate people for moves that would have happened, at least with the Department of Defense. So we're looking at other specific relief measures for our industry. I think, Congress has had 4 rounds of financial relief related to COVID. There will definitely be more. So one of the things that we're doing and strategizing with our global, with our government affairs focus groups is figuring out what are some of the things that we could be advancing, both on a legislative basis, but then also with the agencies. Because if you look at immigration and tax, I mean, there's just some common sense provisions and flexibility that could be put in place that would help employers deal with kind of, I think, unexpected missed deadlines or other things that, before coronavirus, maybe the regulations made sense, but when you have employees who are unexpectedly trapped someplace for a longer period of time and it impacts their visa status or their tax status, is there some relief that we can be asking for? Another just kind of common sense thing that we're working on are electronic signatures. In the mortgage industry, if we could have electronic signatures, it would accelerate the ability to continue to close on houses. In immigration, in fact, we've been asking for this for years. So, why do we need to have wet signatures on documents? So there are things that we're really looking at, and I will be, we're going to be devoting more resources to this soon. So to stay in touch. I'd also say, what we need are your voices. So if you have ideas or if you have ideas for things that we need to be looking at to find solutions, let us know that. If you have government affairs teams, I know many of the larger companies have strong government affairs offices in Washington. Put them in touch with us so that we can tell them what we're doing and we can combine our efforts. On a global basis, how we're approaching this is we are working through the International Organization of Employers, and the IOE represents business groups from about 70 or 80 different countries. And so we're coordinating with them on policies that we can be putting forward to all governments. Obviously the details are different in every nation, but some of the big things that we need are the same, anywhere around the world. So certainly excited about our opportunity. I'm sad that we have to be stepping up this activity right now, but I'm excited that we can help the industry move forward.
Okay, and another question that's come in, and this is a very specific one. This is from Steve Hoffman. Now, Steve, actually, I've got to love Steve, because when I asked you the questions, who your inspirations were, he put on LinkedIn, my inspiration is you, Brian. So I love you, Steve. But anyway, the question from Steve, as I said, it's a very specific one. I expect it's one you'll find hard to answer, I'm afraid, is how likely is it that the Global Workforce Symposium this October in DC is to be cancelled? And are you taking any planning precautions? So maybe talk about your other events as well and just talk about your event strategy.
So let me just start out by saying it will not be canceled, but it may look different than previous years. So right now we are, first and foremost, we have to think about the safety of everybody who's coming. So we're mapping out how might the event look different in person. How could we do social distancing? Might we change networking reception? So we're thinking about that. We're also thinking about how do we take it virtual, because we know many people either will not want to travel or be unable to travel. So we want to make sure that everyone continues to have access to the event. So, what would a blended in-person virtual event look like? And then finally, we just don't know what's going to happen. So, depending on what the governments tell us, if they prohibit gatherings above a certain size, we may make the decision to go completely virtual. These are all things that my team is mapping out right now. And our goal is to make sure that we continue to provide an event for, our members and people in the mobility community to continue to network and meet with each other regardless of how we have it. I mean, there's some really great software that's now available that even would allow us to do virtual exhibit halls where you could sign up and meet with vendors one-on-one and have appointments with them. So we're looking at all of these tools and trying to figure out how we make it work.
Okay. You sort of were talking there about technology, and that gets me on to another area. And in fact, there's a question here. It's from Roman Zelichenko, and Roman asked, "Hi Lynn, question to, in fact, to both of us, to both you and me. Where do you see technology going in the global mobility space?" If you want to kick off, and I'll sort of jump in after.
So, Brian, I may defer to you on this one because I think So I know that technology will play a much greater role in the mobility space, both for corporates and for employees. There's so many different options that are out there now, a lot of startups. And I think what's ERC's role in technology? I think we can be a hub. We can be a clearinghouse, a hub to make our members aware of this new technology and help them sort through all of the different options that are out there. I don't know, Brian, you might have more specifics on what technology might look like and how it might be used.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously with Benivo, which is a technology company, and maybe I'm biased, but we think technology is going to be front and foremost, especially in this, I would say, brave new world. I'm not sure how brave it is, this unfortunate world that we're in at the moment. And I think it will work in lots of ways. But if you look at it from the employer's perspective and the employee's perspective, from the employee's perspective, I think there'll be a reluctance to move. I think there's going to be a bit of post-traumatic stress disorder, if you want to look at it like that people are going to be worried about moving, and their families are going to be worried about moving. So we're going to find maybe that more people are wanting to work virtually, more people are going to want to work from home. The other thing is that we've all learnt, we've learnt technology in a way that we didn't know it before. We're using technology in our businesses, and probably more importantly, governments and indeed health, the public sector, health sector, are using technology. Things like telemedicine, for example. And I think what we're going to see is a lot more technology coming into our everyday lives in that way. So that's going to be a big issue. And I think we're going to see a lot of technology coming in whichever way we look. What I do want to do is I want to ask you one last question before we just start wrapping up, Lynn. You've talked a lot about how ERC can help us, and obviously you are lobbying. But let me ask you this question. How can we help you? How can we, as global mobility professionals around the world, individually or collectively, help support ERC and all the amazing work that you do?
Oh, well, thank you so much for that question. I guess the first thing I would say is if you're not a member, check us out if you haven't checked us out in a while. And if you are a member, participate in our community discussions. We learn so much from you. We need to know what you're thinking about. So participate in our communities. Let us know. And then we have some really exciting new products. We have a benchmarking tool based upon our global movement study. Parts of it are free if you participate, but this will help you benchmark various policies in the mobility space. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity. We also have an enhanced directory coming out, and we have some other tools that will be coming out. So, link with us, pay attention to what we're doing and let us know what you need. I think that's really what you can do for us.
Okay, well, that's pretty much what we've got time for now. We're up to our hour. We allow ourselves an hour. Again, apologies for the technical hitches at the beginning and we couldn't start right on time. I don't know exactly what went wrong with our streaming service, but we couldn't get live on air. Again, I'm getting lots of gratitude from the audience out there. All that really remains is for me to just tell you a little bit about next week. We will be back next week. Julia, again, will be updating us, hopefully, Julia, on everything that's going on. We've got a couple of corporate guests next week. We've got Ryan Buzikis from FIS Global and Karen King from Atikami. So thank you to both of them in advance for joining us next week. Please, everybody out there in LinkedIn world, do tell your friends about this, your friends in the industry anyway, and get others to come along and listen. The more the merrier. It's been great having you listening. It's been great talking to you, Lynn, and we wish you all the best. Hopefully one day soon you'll actually be able to go to the office. I gather it's walking distance. So you'll be able to go there. Julia, many thanks as ever. Looking forward to seeing you both next week. Lynn, certain fingers crossed, see you in October in DC. And thanks everybody. As I said, if anybody's interested in any of the things we've talked about, please either shoot Lynn an email, shoot Julia an email, shoot me an email. And if you're interested in the Remobilization Checklist or the COVID-19 support tool, you can find details on the Benivo website. But we've done our hour, and I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Goodbye.
Thank you.